Welcome back for the round 5 summary of the Brew Bowl. Time to look at how the teams are doing, how the leaderboard is looking, and some of the best players in the league so far. So let's jump across to the spreadsheet, PowerPoint. All right, so let's look at the leaderboard so far. So not a lot of movement at the very top. The Hammerers and the Drakes have stayed in first and second place. We did see a huge jump here from the Warpstone Enslavers because of their very high score difference. The Leichberg Knights also jumped up several spaces. The Marauders jumped up quite a bit after their first win. And then there's just been some casualties in between 1 and 3 spaces with a few teams moving down either because a higher team in front of them or they had a not great result in their 5th round match. But still, yeah, with 9 competition points available, even those on 3 could still potentially match the Hammerers if the Hammerers lost every game from this point onwards. But it is getting towards the point now where to stay in the top 8 and to therefore go through to the playoffs is getting harder for some of those bottom teams. All right, looking at the teams specifically, we'll start with the Ascalon Gladiators, which is Fohammer's Amazon team. They had a match they probably, I think, on paper were more likely to win, but they ended up in a tie with the Executioners. Physera, their blitzer, picked up block. She turned out to be a very effective player because of using good use of the hit and run skill. Letting her basically move extra spaces towards the line, and more than once she was a real scoring threat. So now that she's got Blodge, all she needs is sidestep, and it would be an absolutely insane blitzer. Other than that, Foe spent some money on raising the number of coaches and cheerleaders he had, just to sort of bring his funds down, but he is well set up. The Coatls had a particularly tough game against the Enslavers. They went down 5-0. It was just, nothing seemed to go Pondo's way in that game. At the end of the match, he did pick up some extra linemen. He still needs the name. That's why they've got question marks there. He also bought some assistant coaches and a cheerleader. So, yeah, look, his team is quite strong. And I think it depends on who his opponent is. He's had a really rough game against AP's Enslavers. The Fungus Bay Fanatics, our Goblin team, lost their game against the Marauders. Could have been worse. They didn't really have any losses in terms of player deaths or drafting. They just didn't have a great game. So, they're still a relatively decent team, but they are at the bottom there. They did get block on their Looney, which isn't that great because unless, someone's blocking him, he's more likely to use his chainsaw, which block doesn't apply to. But that's what you get when you roll random secondaries on random players. Okay, the Glamorth Guardians, they tied with the Griffins. They did lose their blitzer to a serious injury, so he'll miss the next game. And shadowing is a skill they picked up on one of their linemen, which, look, their linemen are not fast. They're average speed at 6, so shadowing can still be useful for them. They're blind apothecary in the end as well. That team is doing okay. The Executioners, who pulled out the unlikely tie with the Gladiators, had a rough end of the match. They lost their main blitzer, who had diving tackle. One of their linemen is missing next game. Because I lost the blitzer, we decided instead of rating a second blitzer, we'd add a second witch elf in. So they now have 2 witch elves, 1 blitzer and a runner. So we'll see if that changes the team's outcomes at all, because the witch elf has been doing some real work in the team so far. The Iceborne Peak Jarls had a loss to the Drakes, going down 2-0 in a match they should have drawn. Just that luck didn't go their way. A few badly timed both downs really sort of took the match away from them. And on top of that, they lost both their Valkyries, both with serious injuries. So next game they'll be going in with no Valkyries and a journeyman lineman. So yeah, a rough game for the Jarls to lose, and also the dedicated fans dropped as well because of that game. The Iron Hammers had a great game beating the Butchers, only 1-0, but it was such a slog of a game. They did lose Russ Grimson to the draft, but Spirit has replaced the Hammers with two additional linemen, so he's got a stack of cash and a good team value. So a team that is very resistant to potential problems, and one of their blitzers picked up jump up as well, which can be good for a dwarf blitzer. Okay, then we've got Lawson's team, the Kislev Outcasts, had a loss to the Blight, lost 2 players to miss next game, both their Dark Elf and the player that picked up a skill being Leap, and also lost dedicated fans. So, yeah, no permanent losses there, but still not a great position for that team to be in after round 5. But there's still more rounds to play. The Knights had a great win over the Raiders. They did lose one of the linemen to death, I believe self-inflicted as well. But with their Sonny Vonhoff, their vampire, which is now the protege of Lord Hunger, she's now got Blodge as well as her 2+ agility. So really powerful character there. And also Mike was able to afford to bring in now the 4th vampire. So we've now got a full team of 4 vampires plus thralls. Well, they're both the new players, the new thrall and the new vampire, both came in with Loner as well. And then fans went up. Lauren Forest Drakes had a win over the Jarls, but the game has taken its toll of them. They've got 2 players out missed next game, being their star catcher Midi and the lineman Dakin. And on top of that, Urga, who was one of their linemen, was drafted. So they've been able to buy 1 more lineman, but they will still need to have a journeyman for the next match. So, yeah, really, and this is pretty typical Wood Elf teams. It's very hard to get ahead because they're often spending money to replace lost players. But, it doesn't matter because they've still been doing very well in the league, and they still had a great win over the Jarls. The Northcote Marauders, Omar Krieg's team, got their first win this week, beating the Fanatics off the back of their draw last week. They did lose their tackle blocker to the draft and didn't quite have the funds to replace him. So Omar is choosing to go in the next match with a journeyman. And then after that match, we'll have the funds to buy that 3rd blocker back again. And fans obviously went up after your first win, and they always do. So good result for the Marauders. Scrabble Butchers, disappointing loss to the Dwarves. They also lost one of their Bloodseekers to the draft, but they had funds to replace him straight away. So they just lost that Juggernaut skill. Their other Bloodseeker picked up the Brawler skill. So, yeah, no other real changes for this team, but the Butchers remain a strong threat at the top of the table. The Pantry Raiders lost their battle against the Knights. They had 1 player sell lottery out missing a game. Other than that, no sort of really major changes. Their Hefty did pick up Thick Skull as a skill, and they had excess funds left over, so they bought a cheerleader and also 2 new linemen just to get their funds down beneath that 100k mark. Slum City Blight, good win against the Outcasts. No losses to the team. Picked up tackle on the Blitzer, and Dynamis also got the dedicated fan factor up. So solid improvement for this team. Griffins had their tie with the Guardians, but because the real problem for this match was that their Ogre has been drafted. So Ergo is out, having played through 2 seasons. But they picked up Pro, one of the linemen, but they did not have the funds to replace the Ogre. I briefly considered getting a bodyguard instead, just to change things up, but I decided to keep the funds, and we'll see what happens with the Griffins after the next match. The Enslavers, with a fantastic 5-0 win over the Coattles, picked up Juggernaut on the Gravemaker, which is Rince Barrel Rider's protege. So AP also increased the cheerleaders and coaches, I think, to the maximum amount, and got improved fan factor. So a massive 1100 team value on this team, plus plenty of resiliency with the Apothecary, plus AP's playbook abilities, allowing him to prevent deaths. So this team continues to go from strength to strength. Looking at the player leaderboard, Nerepoli got back onto the bottom of the passes chart again with 5 passes. We've still got the Drakes thrower ahead on 10, and then the 2 human throwers from the Griffins and Guardians just quite slightly behind that. For the highest scorers, I think Fazieth was on the chart, has been pushed off now by other players moving up. So Mossburner and Dawn Michaels have both moved up through the field. Midi also picked up an extra touchdown this week, moving her to 17 total. No changes in interceptions. Most deadly, Ergo is now retired or drafted away, so will soon be replaced by other players. I think that the The Gravemaker has moved up now. I think everybody here, except for those that are no longer playing, moved up slightly this week. Most valuable is just based on who's got the most skills. So Ficera has jumped to the top of that list, or equal top of that list with Rain Lewison. Otherwise, it's just everyone below. Everyone who has 2 skills, and there's probably about 7 players, I think, with 2 skills in the league, sits on the equal third. And then most expensive, the Minotaur has now jumped to the very top of that list at 200k. Plus, then you've got the Gravemaker now with his new Juggernaut skill at 180, and then a bunch of players, including the standard Rat Ogres, the Bloodspawn, the Treeman, all sitting on, well, actually, I think the Treeman are lower than 160 normally, but Ashwood Sharp Thistle has got up there with skills. So there's probably about another 2 or 3 players also sitting on the 160k mark in equal third. Looking at round 6 draw, we've got the Blight versus the Hammerers. Tour player signs the Blight a total score of 10.2 versus the Hammerers 11.6. I think that this will be a really great match to watch because I think that these teams play very differently, and I don't know whether or not Spoon will be able to handle the Nemesis playstyle or vice versa. I think that they will both have to sort of play differently to match against their opponent. I think that they're both great players when it comes to positioning, so it could be a really interesting match to watch. We'll see what happens. Then we've got the Drakes versus the Enslavers. The stats favour the Enslavers here, with them on 9.6 over the Drakes 8.2. Certainly, I think that I definitely favour the Skaven in this match. AP has beat the Drakes once before. They are missing a key player. Yeah, they've got reroll, but they've also got Journeyman. So, yeah, the main thing here will be the Enslavers are going to concede a huge amount of funds to the Drakes. And what the Drakes do with that could really be make or break. Plus, I suppose the other thing to remember with round 6 is the Giants were involved. So the Giants could quickly throw everything on its head. I mean, everyone gets one, but it's still, how well you play those could really determine how the game goes. Then we've got the Knights versus the Gladiators. The Knights on 7.6, the Gladiators on 8.8. So the stats favour the Gladiators there. I probably favour the Gladiators too. I think that Foe is really good at asking questions that the opponents have difficulty finding answers for. I think that it could be a high-scoring game on both sides. So, but I do think a draw or a win to the Gladiators are probably the most likely. But maybe I'll be proven wrong. We'll have to wait and see. Then we've got the Butchers against the Outcasts. So the Butchers on 11.6, the Outcasts on 9.4. I mean, the Butchers are still in this ranking system, the second highest ranked team in terms of the tour play score, which is skewed by the fact they do so much fouling and get away with it, seems most of the time. And of course, Lawson's not afraid to foul either. So this could be a very brutal match. I hope it is a brutal match. I think it'll be a lot of fun to watch a real match of attrition. And I think that Lawson has the technicality to really throw the game on its head as well. So I'll have to wait and see. Then we've got the Executioners playing the Jarls. This will be an NPC match that won't be recorded normally. It'll just be a summary match. Executioners on 8, Jarls on 9.2. Look, normally I favour the Jarls. Missing their 2 Valkyries, though, could be bad. Plus, you've then got the situation where you've got 2 frenzy pieces in the form of the Ulfunar on one side and 2 frenzy pieces in the form of the Witch Elves on the other side. So, yeah, it could be an all-over-the-shop match. We'll just have to wait and see how that goes. The Marauders versus the Quaddles. The Marauders sitting on 7.6 to the Quaddles 7.2. I think that is a false number. I think the Quaddles number has been dropped by their big loss against the Enslavers, but they are a much stronger team than that. So, I mean, this is 2 players who are relatively fresh to this game. And like with PC games, I have to avoid throwing in too many suggestions. So I'll have to have a look and see how they do, on their own. But yeah, I think the match could go either way. Then we've got the Guardians versus the Fanatics, another NPC match. Guardians on 7.6, Fanatics on 7.8. The Fanatics have had a really bad run. I think they're better than their stats would show. I think that, if they can really get their chainsaw and their bomber going, they can do a lot of damage. So I'd like to favour the Fanatics there. I think that the Guardians have been playing better recently. But time will tell. And then finally, we've got the Raiders versus the Griffins in another NPC match. So the Raiders on 8.2, the Griffins on 8. mean, the Griffins have lost their ogre, but once again, there is a huge TV difference here. So the Taliban Griffins could easily bring in some sort of mercenary or some combination of inducement that just really turn the game around. So yeah, I think 8.2 versus 8 is very close, and I think that game could easily go either way. We have rolled up the pitches for round 6, and I think it's called it's not slope ground, it's like uneven footing is what we got for the Raiders Griffins match, which means that all players reduce their MA by 1 to a minimum of 3. No effect on the treatment, who are already 2, but that drops the halflings to 4, and that really limits their ability to get around the field as well. So it also applies to the Griffins, but it drops their blitzes from 7 to 6 and their linemen from 6 to 5. I think that the drop from 5 to 4 hurts the halflings much more, and will give the Griffins a chance to really position and cause some harm with blocks. So that's the end of the round 5 summary. Round 6 giant round is coming up this week, so stay tuned. We all hope you're enjoying the show. Don't forget you can come over to Arthur Perthen's Gaming Reel, AP Gaming Reel's Discord, and you can chat with the players, with myself, and just enjoy Blood Bowl action altogether. Take care, and we'll see you next time.